From the earliest memories I have, one thing in my childhood home was always clear. Beta, that room stays locked, no matter what. Those words echoed in my mind for years. My mother's voice trembled every time she said them, as if the door itself could hear her. I never knew why. I didn't dare ask again after seeing the panic in her eyes. The door stood at the end of the hallway, old, wooden, and strangely uninviting. Its surface was scratched and worn, as though it had been opened countless times in the past. Some nights I swore I could hear scratching from inside the room, other nights, faint sobbing, and sometimes a whisper calling my name. I could never tell if it was my imagination or something else. As a child, I was naturally curious. I asked friends to guess what could be behind the door, imagining all sorts of fantastical things. A hidden treasure, a secret laboratory, or even a ghost. But none of their guesses came close to the feeling I had when I stood in front of the door. Something about it made my stomach churn, a cold dread that I couldn't shake off. Whenever I inquired about it, my mother snapped. Her eyes filled with fear, and her voice became sharp. "It's just storage. Forget it." But how can a locked room be storage for years? Clothes, old boxes, or dust? Something didn't fit. The older I grew, the more I noticed the signs. My mother never stayed at home alone after sunset. She always kept the lights on near that hallway. When she left, her bedroom door was open, as if she was watching the forbidden door herself. I asked my father once. He avoided eye contact, muttering something about respecting my mother's privacy. That didn't help. Curiosity festered, and fear made it worse. I would lie awake at night, staring at the door, wondering what secrets it held. Years passed. I became a teenager, then a young adult. The door remained, always locked, always silent, always tempting. It called me in my dreams, showing flashes of shadows and whispers I couldn't explain. Then one night, everything changed. My mother collapsed suddenly. The ambulance arrived, and I was there, holding her hand as she was taken away. Before they closed the doors, she whispered in a voice almost too soft to hear, "Don't open it, even if you hear me calling you." Her eyes, usually gentle, were filled with terror. The words froze me. What could possibly be so dangerous inside that room that my own mother feared it more than anything else? When she was rushed to the hospital, unconscious, I returned home alone. For the first time in decades, I was in the house without her. The silence was deafening. I walked past the familiar rooms, but the hallway where the forbidden door stood felt heavier. The air was thick, as though the walls themselves were watching me. At exactly 2:14 a.m., a sound shattered the stillness. A knock. Just one, then another, and then a whisper, soft, almost pleading. "Beta, open the door, it's me, Mama." My blood ran cold. My mother was unconscious in the hospital. Who or what was calling me? I reached for the handle, my hands trembling uncontrollably. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to leave the house forever. But I couldn't. Curiosity, fear, and something darker kept me rooted in place. With a deep breath, I turned the key I had kept hidden for emergencies. The door creaked slowly as I pushed it open. And that's when I saw it, a glimpse of the secret that would change my life forever. The door creaked open slowly, and the dim light from the hallway spilled into the room. My heart was pounding so loudly I thought it might echo through the walls. What I saw made my knees nearly buckle. The room was empty, or at least it seemed so at first glance. Dust covered the floor, and old cobwebbed furniture sat haphazardly in corners. But something felt alive in the shadows, as if the darkness itself were watching me. I could hear a faint whisper again. My mother's voice. It was soft, distant, and yet terrifyingly close. Then my eyes fell on a crib in the corner. A small, old-fashioned crib, covered in dust, yet it seemed untouched for decades. On it lay a tiny blanket and a small stuffed toy. My heart raced. My mother had never had a baby besides me. That was what everyone in the family knew. And yet, here was evidence that contradicted everything. I approached the crib slowly, each step deliberate, as if the room itself would punish me for hurrying. On the wall above it, a photograph was pinned, my mother holding two babies. Two babies, not one. My mind froze. I had been told my brother had died before I was born, but this photograph suggested otherwise. The whisper grew louder, more urgent. Why are you ignoring me? Open the door? I jumped back. The voice came from behind me, yet the door had been locked from the outside. My breath caught in my throat. Was it my imagination? Or was something, in the room with me? Then I noticed movement. The shadows on the floor shifted. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, a rocking chair began to move by itself. The blanket in the crib rustled. A cold chill ran down my spine. I wanted to run, scream, anything. But my legs felt glued to the floor. My mind raced. My mother had warned me, "Don't open it." But now I had, and I couldn't turn back. The room seemed to pulse with life, as if it were breathing. And then I saw it. A small, almost invisible door at the far side of the room, partially hidden behind a curtain. My curiosity overcame my fear. I stepped toward it, reaching out. The whispering grew frantic. "Don't leave me. Don't leave me." I hesitated. I felt a presence behind me, cold and heavy, yet unseen. My pulse thundered in my ears. Finally, I turned toward the small door and pushed it open. Inside was a tiny hidden space, a secret closet filled with toys, clothes, and a diary. The diary had my mother's handwriting, dated decades ago. I picked it up with trembling hands. The first page made my blood run cold. "I cannot let him see. He must never know. The truth of what lives in the room. Only she can survive." A sudden realization hit me. This wasn't just a forbidden room. This was a prison, a place meant to hide something or someone dangerous. My mother had tried to protect me all these years. But from what? The whisper turned into a soft sobbing, coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. I stumbled back, the diary clutched to my chest. I knew one thing. I couldn't leave this room without answers. But every instinct screamed at me to run, to escape the house, to forget I ever saw it. I took a deep breath. The next step would change everything. The diary felt heavier in my hands than it actually was, as if it carried the weight of the secrets it held. Every page I turned made my heart pound faster. My mother's handwriting was elegant but hurried, almost frantic, as though she was racing against time. The first entry read, "I cannot let him see. He must never know. Only she can survive. The room is not what it seems. What we hide here must never leave these walls. If the secret is revealed, all will be lost." I froze. What could possibly be so dangerous that my mother risked everything to keep me away? My mind raced. Was this about a person, or something else entirely? The next page revealed a shocking truth. "He is not human. I have kept him here for decades, feeding him, watching him. He cannot leave. He cannot touch the outside world. She must never find out." My hands shook. I had no idea who he was, and yet the words felt like a warning screaming across time. I looked around the room, the crib, the rocking chair, the shadows. Could something still be alive in here? A sudden noise made me jump, a soft creak behind me. I spun around, but the room was empty, or so it seemed. The whispering returned, this time more distinct. "She's here. She's finally here." I dropped the diary, and it fell open to a page with a drawing. It was crude, almost childlike, but horrifying. A small figure, hidden in the shadows of the room, reaching out with long, thin arms. Beneath it, a note. "He waits. Always waits. Only she can face him." My blood ran cold. I had to know more. I picked up the diary again, flipping rapidly through the pages. Each entry told a story of my mother's struggle, her fear, her desperation to keep me safe. She had hidden this being in the room for years, raising me while guarding a secret so dark it seemed impossible to imagine. I felt a sudden movement behind me. The room temperature dropped, and the air grew thick. The crib rattled slightly. The rocking chair shifted. My pulse raced. I whispered aloud, trying to convince myself, "It's just my imagination. It has to be." But deep down, I knew it wasn't. Something was in the room with me, something alive. Something that had been waiting all these years for me to enter. I stumbled toward the small hidden door at the back. The diary clutched tightly to my chest. I opened it, revealing another layer of the secret. A hidden crawl space. A small dark room, filled with whispers and shadows. I could hear faint breathing, and then I saw him, a small figure crouched in the corner, his eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. I froze. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but curiosity, terror, and a strange sense of duty kept me rooted. This was the being my mother had protected me from all my life, the being I was meant to confront. He looked at me with a gaze that pierced straight through my soul. A mix of innocence and menace, childlike yet terrifying. I could feel his awareness, his hunger, his loneliness. And in that instant, I understood. The whispers, the shadows, the locked room, all of it had been for this moment. I stepped back slowly, my mind racing. How could I survive what my mother had kept hidden for decades? How could I face a being no one else could see, hear, or understand? The room seemed to pulse with life, reacting to my fear. And then I heard it again, louder, closer. You're here. Finally. You're mine. My heart froze. The truth was no longer just on paper. It was here, alive and waiting. My legs trembled as I stepped backward, never taking my eyes off the small figure crouched in the corner. Its glowing eyes seemed to pierce my very soul, a mix of childlike innocence and a cold, predatory awareness. I could feel its gaze tracking every subtle movement I made, as though it could anticipate my thoughts. I clutched the diary tightly to my chest, the pages fluttering as if the being's presence was making the room itself breathe. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to escape the room, to abandon curiosity. But I couldn't. Fear had transformed into a strange kind of fascination. I needed answers. What are you? I whispered, my voice trembling. The figure didn't move immediately. Then, slowly, it rose, tall and unnaturally thin, its shadow stretching across the walls like black smoke. Its small childlike features twisted in a way that was both terrifying and familiar, and a low whisper echoed through the room. You shouldn't be here, but now you are. The air grew colder and the shadows on the walls seemed to grow darker, thicker. I could see shapes moving in the corners of my vision, shapes that weren't real, yet undeniably there. The diary slipped from my hands and fell to the floor. It opened, revealing a page I hadn't seen before. She will come. She is the only one who can face him. She must not falter. The room chooses its keeper. I swallowed hard. The room wasn't just a room, it was alive. And the being inside was not just hidden. It had been waiting, watching, for decades. I felt a presence close behind me, cold fingers brushing against my shoulder. I spun around. Nothing. But the whisper came again, louder this time. You are mine, like the others before you. My chest tightened. Others? My mind raced. What had my mother been hiding all these years? Who were these others? And why was I different? Why had I been protected all my life while the others were not? I backed toward the small hidden door, hoping to escape, but the room seemed to expand, stretching impossibly, trapping me. The being moved closer, its glowing eyes never leaving mine. I could hear the faintest breathing, soft yet threatening, filling the room with tension. I thought of my mother's warnings. Don't open it, even if you hear me calling you. Now, every word made sense. She had known the danger, had known that this being could manipulate, control, or even destroy. And I was alone. The being's voice changed, softer now, almost childlike, pleading, Please, stay. I've waited so long. Don't leave me. My instincts screamed at me to run, but my curiosity, my need for truth, anchored me in place. Slowly, I stepped forward, my hands shaking, my eyes never leaving its face. And then it spoke clearly, almost human. You are the one I have waited for. Only you can free me, or be trapped forever like the others. The weight of its words hit me like a thunderclap. I realized then that my mother hadn't just been protecting me from the room. She had been protecting the world from it. From him. I had to act. But how? The diary held some clues, but every second counted. The shadows seemed to move faster now, curling around me like living tendrils. I could feel them brushing against my skin, whispering, testing me. The being stepped closer. Its hand reached out, not in anger, not in violence, but in a way that was almost hopeful. Do you understand? You are the key. You are the only one who can end this. My mind reeled. How could a childlike being, trapped in a room for decades, be so powerful? How could it control the shadows, the air, the very walls? And most importantly, could I survive confronting it? I took a deep, shuddering breath. There was no turning back. My hands shook as I took another step forward. The shadows in the room seemed to pulse with every beat of my heart, stretching and twisting around me like living creatures. The being's glowing eyes followed me, unblinking, a mixture of longing and menace. I clutched the diary tighter, knowing that somehow, within these pages, lay the key to surviving what was coming. You have waited for me? I whispered, my voice barely audible over the pounding of my own pulse. Yes, the being replied, its voice echoing unnaturally through the room. I've waited decades, trapped, hungry, lonely, forgotten by the world except for her, it added, gesturing vaguely toward the locked room's corner. My keeper, my protector, your mother. I felt a chill run down my spine. Everything suddenly made sense. The room, the whispers, the warnings. My mother had spent her life guarding him, feeding him, keeping him contained, and protecting me from him. But why now? Why had he called me here? The shadows thickened, curling around my feet and rising toward my knees, then waist, like ink in water. I could feel them tugging at me, urging me closer to the crib, to the hidden corner where he had crouched for decades. I resisted. I had to. Why me? I asked, my voice trembling. Why now? He tilted his head, eyes glowing brighter. Because only you can see me. Only you can end it. Or become part of it. You are the key. My release, or your doom. The diary fell open to a page I hadn't seen before, trembling in my hands. The words were written in my mother's familiar hand, but frantic, almost desperate. If she reads this, she must act. The shadows obey him, but only one can command them. She is the chosen. Only she can contain or destroy him. She must not fail. I stared at the page, then at him. The being advanced slowly, deliberately, shadows writhing like snakes along the walls. Each movement made the room tremble, like it had a heartbeat of its own. I could hear faint whispers all around me now, unintelligible, urgent, as if hundreds of voices were trapped in the corners of the room. I had no choice. I had to act. My mother had raised me for this moment, unknowingly, teaching me courage, patience, resilience, all the tools I needed to face this being. I flipped to another page in the diary, discovering instructions. Strange symbols, words, and rituals I didn't fully understand, but instinctively felt were correct. The being's voice rang again. Do it. Free me, or remain trapped forever. I obeyed my instincts. I traced the symbols in the air with my fingers, speaking the words softly. The shadows hissed and recoiled. The room shook violently. The crib rattled. The glow from his eyes intensified until I felt like they were burning into my soul. Then, suddenly, silence. The shadows retreated, swirling into the corners, vanishing as if sucked into nothingness. The being crouched in the corner, smaller now, weaker, no longer menacing, but pitiful, almost human. His glowing eyes dimmed. You have done it, he whispered. The room, I am free, yet bound by your will. I sank to the floor, trembling, exhausted but alive. The room was still, the air was lighter, the whispers were gone. The crib remained, empty and silent. I finally understood. My mother had kept me safe from this being, but she had also prepared me to confront him, to contain him, command him, and survive. I was the first to do it in decades. But even as relief washed over me, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was not the end. Something lingered in the shadows, watching, waiting. The room had been defeated, for now, but it would never truly leave. I collapsed against the wall, exhausted, my hands shaking as if every bone in my body had been turned to jelly. The room was silent. The shadows had vanished. The crib, the toys, the hidden corners, all seemed ordinary again. But I knew better. I had confronted something decades in the making, something my mother had feared more than anything. The diary lay open beside me. I traced the words, memorizing them, understanding their warnings. This was no ordinary secret. This was a power, a being bound for centuries, held only by my mother's courage and now by mine. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing thoughts. Every step I took in the room felt surreal. The whispers, the rocking chair, the glowing eyes. It was all over. But the feeling of being watched lingered. I knew deep down the room itself had not surrendered entirely. It had only paused, waiting, watching for the next chapter. I finally found the strength to leave the room. Each step back into the hallway felt lighter, freer, but also heavy with responsibility. I had survived. I had confronted the being my mother had hidden from the world, and I had lived. But the house and the secrets within it would always be a part of me. The next morning, my mother woke from the hospital. Her eyes were weak but filled with relief the moment she saw me. I rushed to her side. "I did it," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I faced it." Her lips quivered. "I knew you would. I had no choice but to trust you, to prepare you." She paused, then added softly, "The room, it waits for the next time. Always. But you are strong enough to keep it contained." We spent the rest of the day talking, piecing together decades of hidden history. My mother explained everything. The being, the whispers, the others who had been trapped in that room before me. Each revelation was more shocking than the last, yet every detail made sense. The warnings, the secrecy, the fear, it had all been for me, for my survival. But even as I listened, a part of me could not shake the feeling that the room was alive, that it remembered me, and that it would never truly be gone. The house, once a place of comfort, now felt charged with energy, a living, breathing entity waiting in the shadows. I knew my life would never be the same. I had seen what few humans had ever seen. I had confronted a being that had defied time, darkness, and isolation. I had survived, and yet the warning lingered in my mind. The room watches, the shadows wait, and it remembers who opened the door. As I stepped outside into the sunlight, I felt both relief and dread. The world was ordinary again, yet I carried a secret too heavy for anyone else to understand. I had faced the darkness, survived its trial, and now I held the power to protect the next generation. But I also knew one thing. The room was patient. It waits. Always. And one day, it would call again. I had thought the ordeal was over. The room had been faced, the being confronted, and my mother's warnings finally made sense. I returned to the house after a week in the hospital, determined to bring some sense of normalcy back to my life. But normalcy was a word I would never be able to use again. The house was quiet, almost too quiet. Every creak of the floorboards made me flinch. I felt the weight of the diary in my bag, the only proof of what I had faced. I placed it on the table in the living room, hoping that sharing its secrets with my mother would finally end the fear that had gripped our family for decades. But then I noticed it. The locked door at the end of the hallway. It looked ordinary now, as if nothing had ever been hidden behind it. Yet something deep in my gut screamed that this was a lie. I approached cautiously. Every instinct begged me to leave it alone, but I needed answers. One final look, one final confrontation. I inserted the key. The door creaked open slowly, revealing the room exactly as I remembered. The crib, the rocking chair, the hidden closet, and the shadows that seemed to curl around the corners. But it was empty, silent, peaceful, almost. Relief washed over me. Maybe it was finally over. Then I saw it, a small envelope on the crib. My name was written in my mother's familiar handwriting. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a note. "You were brave. You survived, but the room never forgets. The being is bound, yes, but its consciousness remains. One day it will call again. Only you have the power to face it. Protect the family, protect the world, and never forget what lies within." A chill ran down my spine. I understood then that this was never just a room. It was a prison, a sentient entity, a force bound by decades of vigilance. My mother's life had been a shield. Mine now would be the sword. Suddenly, the shadows shifted. Not threateningly, not violently, but in a way that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. They were watching me. And then, a whisper, softer than before, almost gentle, yet unmistakably there. Thank you. But remember, I am always here. I turned toward the hallway. The house felt alive again, pulsing with quiet energy. I knew I had survived, but I also knew the truth. This room would always be a part of my life. Always a reminder of the being, the shadows, and the secret my family had guarded for generations. I closed the door gently, locking it. But this time, I left the key on the table, not as an invitation, but as a warning. A record. A testament to what had occurred. Whoever would come after me, whoever would live in this house next, must know. The room watches, it waits, and it never forgets. As I stepped outside into the sunlight, I felt a mixture of relief and unease. I had survived. I had confronted darkness that few had ever faced. But one thought remained in my mind, chilling yet undeniable. The room may be silent now, but it remembers me. And one day it will call again. And when it does, I will be ready.